recession is looming, and that's a scary thing. What is it? And what can you do about it? That's what we're going to talk about today, based on research and my own experiences going through 2 recessions already. Keep watching. Hello, I'm Yoram from Economia, your destination for financial independence, tips to invest and spend wisely. After 10 years of economic growth, if we believe the data, we are poised for a hard landing and a recession. What's the situation? What is a recession? And what kind of effect does it have? And more importantly, what steps can you take to prepare yourself? We're going to talk about all of this as soon as you click the like button for the YouTube algorithm. That will help us a lot. It's down below. Thank you. Let's get started. So what's the situation? Since the last recession ended in 2009, we've lived through a very good period of growth. Economies have grown, the markets have grown, obviously. Everybody's income has gone up. Poverty has started to go down. All of that fueled by historically low interest rate. All was good and well across the world, except maybe the rise in housing price. The jury is still out on that. All was well, as I'm mentioning, but we're starting to see signs of the situation heating up a bit, in terms of the economy heating up a bit. Then, of course, pandemic happened, and we've all been through the lockdowns, massive printing of money, state subsidies, and this led to a few things like the stock market going crazy, obviously the Great Resignation, a lot of people moved around, and we can also think about crypto going up. And since this year, fortunately, as we know, things are starting to look better. But at the same time, with all of this pressure from the pandemic, we've seen the supply chain being constrained, leading to less supply and the prices going up. Not so fun. Then this year, February 24th, Russia attacked Ukraine, creating even more trouble, of course, in terms of supply chain and geopolitical turmoil. We can think about the oil, gas, wheat, and of course sunflower oil. I was forgetting this one. And the movement of goods and people got affected. Of course, all of that piling up on top of each other. And of course, as we've discussed in a previous video, inflation, so the prices have been going up at a speed never seen for the past 40 years. Really, really tough situation for all of us. And the price of gas continues going up and down. It's quite tough, and the latest data are showing us it keeps going up. With prices going up, the central banks have been hiking their interest rate to try to slow down the economies. That's their job after all. Well, central banks are there to make sure that recession is under control and that doesn't affect the economy too much and the job markets. But this has increased a lot. This has a repercussion on the growth, economic growth across the world. If we look at what the World Bank is telling us about 2022, we should have a big slowdown of the economy. And if we just look at what happened in the first quarter for the G20 countries, the growth was actually negative by 0.7% across the board. If we look at the US, the first quarter growth was actually negative by 0.4%. France was down 0.2% and Japan 0.1%. And as you can see on the chart, most other countries in G20 were flat with a few exceptions. If we are looking at Q2, we're still waiting for the actual figures, but the prediction, at least for the US, would be minus 1.2% according to the Atlanta Federal Reserve. Japan and France, that I just mentioned, should be flat or barely going up, less than 1%. And that should be the same overboard, with a few countries like Germany going up. If we go back to the US, if it's actually a negative quarter in Q2 as well, that would be 2 quarters of negative growth. That's what's called a recession. Of course, it's just the US for the time being that we can see, but in our globally connected economy, the US being the largest economy in the world, if it starts going down and entering a recession, within this year, all the other economies are going to feel it. And France is the number 7 in the world. Japan is number 3. You can imagine when those economies are completely slowing down or maybe becoming inactive, they affect everybody around them. So the situation doesn't look good. And on July 26, 27, the Fed has its next meeting where they're probably going to announce another rate hike because the economy or the inflation, I should say, is still going up. And about that time, we should have the final data on the actual Q2 growth or lack thereof for the US. So overall, by that time, we should know where the US is heading, and by mid-August, we should know for France and Japan. So the situation and the news doesn't look very positive yet. Now, let's see what are the effects of a recession, how long it lasts, and what we can learn from the past. So, what is a recession? This is a very good question. We should start there. Let's look at 2 definitions to get started. A recession is a macroeconomic term that refers to a significant decline in general economic activity in a designated region. It had been typically recognized as 2 consecutive quarters of economic decline, as reflected by GDP, in conjunction with monthly indicators such as rise in unemployment. And there's a more complete definition now. The National Bureau of Economic Research, which officially declares recession, says the 2 consecutive quarters of decline in real GDP are not how it is defined anymore. The NBER defines a recession as a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in real GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. So as we could see, it's not just a simple slowdown in GDP. There are a lot of different factors. But actually, recessions are normal part of our economic cycle, with what we call them bust, and you have boom period, the one we're just probably ending now. And they happen very frequently. As you can see this list on screen of all the past ones, they happen on average every 58.4 months since World War II, and last on average 11.1 months, so a bit less than a year. Though the last Great Recession lasted 18 months, and the pandemic recession itself lasted only 2 months. So, a lot of bad news, but it continues because a recession has wide-ranging effects. If we look at companies first, if there is economic contraction, companies need to be prepared, and usually they do a lot of cost reduction or cost cutting. They would reduce their inventory, they would reduce their expenses, they would probably launch less product, they would cap salaries, they would cap the bonus or make the bonus disappear. And worse comes to worse, they may start laying off people as well. This has an effect for them, but also obviously for their employees, and their employees are also consumers. So this has a domino effect on consumption. So we go downward from there. So far, besides Q1 GDP being negative or flat and deflation going crazy, we have not seen many negative data points. Actually, employment data just came out from the US and they were way better than expected. So we need to keep looking at inventory level, production level, wholesale and retail sales to see the movement that can happen. Another interesting indicator are the earnings. We're going to have the earnings coming up for Q2 and also the earning guidance for Q3 and the whole remaining of 2022 and going into 2023. The reason why companies do that is they want to tell investors what they think is going to happen and what kind of measures they can take. I just mentioned them. Maybe they're going to reduce a bit the investment. Maybe they're going to buy back shares. Maybe going to freeze hiring. A lot of things may happen. So if we look at this chart, so far the earning forecasts are going down and are becoming a bit negative now overall. we're going to have to keep watching because the earnings season just started off last week in the US, and the darlings of the stock market, the GAFAM, so Google, Meta, Apple and Amazon are going to come on July 26th, 27th, and 28th. Then, mid-August, we're going to have Walmart and Target closer to everyday needs, are going to give us a bit of an indication of where they think the economy is going to be going, and they see immediately, as people are buying every day staples, they're going to realize and tell us where things are heading almost by the minute. They see the cash register data very quickly. On the other side, if we look at energy sector, obviously with the price of gas and oil, they should be okay. And the banks should be doing well too because the rates are going higher and higher. Usually banks are doing well in this environment, except if we start seeing defaults on loans, but that's another story. So I know that's a lot of data, that's a lot of things to digest, but that's to give you an overview of what a recession and the effects on the economy and on us every day, the kind of effect it can have. Now, let's go to the next part. What steps can you take to prepare yourselves? What steps can you take to prepare yourself for the looming recession? First and foremost, I want to remind you, this is not financial advice. Please do your own research. And this is just my own opinion, a guy on YouTube, and this is for information and entertainment purpose only. That being said, what I'm going to talk about is based on my own research as well as my own experience going through the recession of the 2000 dot-com bubble and the 2008-2009 subprime mortgage induced recession. So yes, I'm old enough to have been in the 2000 dot-com bubble recession. At the time, I had just started working and was working for a very large consumer good company that was starting working on e-commerce. Everything was very well because I started there in 1999, just in the middle of the bubble. So budgets were there, a lot of projects, a lot of resources to develop the e-commerce. 2000 hit and the bubble burst. Immediately, project got cancelled, budget disappeared or were reduced by 90%. Salaries were frozen, bonuses frozen, and we had to tighten our belts because we didn't know what tomorrow would be. Fortunately, because I was in such a large company, I kept my job. I was one of the lucky few. My second experience was in 2008, 2009, when we had the subprime induced recession. There, I was working in digital marketing as a contract worker, and I was a bit shocked because when companies look at a recession and they want to reduce costs, usually one of the first things they do is reduce communication, marketing, and advertising costs. As I was mentioning, I was a contract worker, so basically one of the people easiest to lay off, not a regular employee. He was working all in for months and months and months, really to try to keep the job, and obviously on the side tightening my belt. Less restaurants, no more expensive coffee, holidays, everything was tightened up. And as I said, I was really lucky I kept my job, but I learned how to act when there's a recession and what steps you should be taking. Based on the experiences I just mentioned and my own research, here are 6 steps you can take to prepare yourself for the upcoming recession. Number 1, be the best you can at your job. That's exactly what I just talked about. Show your boss, show your colleague how much work you're doing, what you can bring to the company, what you're actually bringing. Usually, companies are less willing to lay off their best employees. It's not a guarantee, but that's a good thing to start with. Number 2, just to be sure, update your resume and your LinkedIn profile. If worse come to worse, you'll have everything ready to start immediately looking for a new job. And of course, nowadays, it might be a good idea to look at your social media profiles and take off maybe some stupid pictures or some posts you did after a few drinks. Just an idea. Number 3, invest in yourself. You have now online a lot of different resources to get better at your job, learn new skills, and be actually a better employee or a better candidate, more appealing candidate on the market. I was about to say stock market. No, on the job market. So invest in yourself. Number 4, put your finance in order. We've talked about it in a previous video. Make sure that you don't have some expenses that are not necessary. So reduce the expenses, go through all your expenses, what you don't really need, things you don't use. Maybe you can cut them down. Maybe you can scale down other expenses. Maybe rather than going to a very specialty coffee shop every day, maybe you go only twice a week. Same for restaurants. If you have a trip planned, maybe you can scale it down or maybe report it by a few months just to see how things are going on. And of course, the other one is look at your debt and try to pay back high interest debt. The main one that comes into mind is obviously credit card debt. Try to get rid of those and not have others. Really just spend with your means and try to spend less than you can. And of course, make sure your emergency fund is ready. I mentioned about a fund that's between 3, 6, or 12 months of your expenses to be ready, because you never know if worse come to worse and you lose your job, you need that money to be able to pay your expenses, provide for your loved ones until you find a new job. Finally, number 6 is take a second job if you have the time. A side hustle. Maybe a job for 2 or 3 days a week, if you can. The reason I'm saying that is twofold. One, it's an extra experience with a bit of money. And second, if you were to lose, unfortunately, your main source of income, you would still have something to fall back on until you find a new job, a more regular job. So those are the 6 steps you could take to prepare yourself. Time to sum up. As we've seen, the situation doesn't look very good. We're not sure yet, but the indicators are telling us that we might be heading towards a recession. It's going to be tough and it's going to be widespread all across the world, and we need to be ready. So here I'm showing you again the 6 steps you can take to prepare yourself as much as possible for what can come. And this might last a few months until the end of the year and maybe into 2023. We do not know yet. But as I said, usually recessions are 11 months. So we might be in until summer 2023 or maybe the end of 2023. Either way, it's going to be a tough time, but we are all in there together. We keep our heads straight toward working, taking care of our loved ones, and keep positive. And we'll see the developments together. That's all I had for you today. Thank you for taking time to watch this video. I hope the information was useful for you. If it was, please give us a like, subscribe for new videos, and if you have the time, look down in the description box for a few referral links for crypto. And of course, if you have any comments, please leave it down below. Thank you again, and talk to you soon.